I'm your host, Anthony Tank Mansfield. And with me today is
Callie Wright, aka Ursa Mamer. You'll probably heard me called because we know each other through Derby.
and this is What You Into.
What you into? What you into?
Coming in hot on the podcast. Callie, thank you for coming in and doing the show. I appreciate the fact that you know how podcasts work. Thank you for making my job so much easier.
I'm here for you. I am to serve. Happy to do it.
Which chair do you prefer to be in? Do you prefer to be the host of the show or the guest of the show?
Oh God, that's hard. It really depends. I think it depends on the individual person that I'm interviewing or being interviewed by.
Agreed.
No pressure.
Yes. No, I'm 100% right there with you, because sometimes it's nice to be, sometimes it's cool to be the guest because you're like, oh, cool, I get to talk and like expand on thought right now. And sometimes it's a nightmare because the host just completely overtalks you the entire time or shifts the subject, or they have no clue what, or like they're not prepared and you're just like, oh man, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah. I mean, the reason that I love podcasting so much fundamentally is that it lets me make connections with people. Mm-hmm. And hosting can be a really good way to do that. But when you're hosting a podcast, you have to have 3 or 4 different things in mind at any given time. Mm-hmm. And also because I spend a lot of time making like long form narrative. So as I'm interviewing someone, I'm not just thinking about like question to answer. I'm thinking about how am I editing this into a story over time, and what background information do we need to get? If I'm missing a detail of the story, I have to think about asking that. And I have to be thinking about, after 30 hours of editing, what this is going to sound like versus in the moment. And I have to maintain that connection with this person, because most of the time when I interview people, they are not used to being on a podcast. Mm-hmm. And so I have to think about, how do I make these folks comfortable? Yep. How do I get them to loosen up? Because if you're not used to being on a microphone, it's intimidating. And that's not like, I don't say that dismissively. No. I felt the exact same way when I started podcasting. It's just been a very long time for me.
Yeah. It's like the first time you do public speaking and you realize how so many people are terrified of it, and there definitely is that a bit with podcasts where I'm with you. It's like, I've done this enough now where I'm like, old hat. But the first few times you do it and somebody's like, oh, it's just a microphone, we're just having a discussion. It's like, are we? Because people are going to hear this.
Yeah, that's my soapbox, is people are like, it's just a microphone. No, microphones are scary. Like, the dynamic between people changes when there is a microphone and somebody hits a record button. Like, things are different because you're not just talking to each other, you're talking to an audience. And whether that's like a dozen people or thousands of people, again, if it's not a thing you're used to, it's really scary.
Yeah, definitely not easy. All right, well, look, now that we've talked a little inside baseball, let's do this. Let's hit some plugs real quick. So people can find you online on Instagram, Callie Gets It, and your podcast, Philosophers in Space. Let's talk that real quick since we're here talking podcast stuff. Okay, what's the show about? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, so my partner Aaron and I make the podcast, Philosophers in Space. Aaron is an expert in philosophy. He's like working on a PhD, super well-educated academic type perspective. And I am kind of the person who knows enough to hopefully ask smart questions about philosophy, and how we approach it is through the lens of sci-fi stories.
Okay, cool.
So we'll watch an episode of a TV show, watch a movie, read a book. We're even thinking about doing games, and we'll spend a little time picking apart the story, what we think works and doesn't, the things that stood out to us and all of that. And then we spend a long time discussing the philosophy that the show or book or whatever brings up, and work through like what it all means. So we've been talking a lot lately about the nature of sentience and personhood and consciousness. We've talked about panpsychism, which is the theory that like everything in the universe is part of a collective consciousness. Like, we've talked about distributed cognition, theory of mind, all the sorts of like super heady philosophy stuff. But he's an applied ethicist, and I'm just kind of a pragmatist, and I'm like, I think most philosophy does boil its way back down to being about the real world and how we move through the real world. Sometimes it can feel a little too abstracted from that, and that's not really where my interests are. My interests are in asking those kinds of questions to figure out how we move through the world in ways that are better towards other people, towards the environment that we're in. And the thing for me is working through all of those questions to hopefully have a better view of how I treat the world around me. And hopefully we come to some sort of conclusion in there, but usually it's just like fretting over how a lot of these questions are fundamentally unanswerable, and we all just kind of got to do our best.
Yeah, that is the thing with philosophy. There's times where it's like, wait, what does this mean? And then it could mean this, or it might just be nothing. And, you kind of go back and forth on it. And it is all the big heady shit where it's like, what the fuck are we doing on this floating rock? Like, what is the point of all this, And yeah, and it isn't easy because there's a lot of times where it's like, well, I don't know, how do you answer this question? And sometimes people aren't comfortable with that. There's a lot of times where humans aren't comfortable with the fact that there isn't an answer, and they'll try to like look through something like religion or something else to fill that void. They're like, okay, if there's something I can put stock in, just be like, it's okay, it's cool, because people would prefer that as opposed to, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think religion is an easy scapegoat. And I don't say that to let religion off the hook. I am an atheist and have been for a very long time. But I think a lot of people leave some form of religion behind and think that they've like leveled up in their worldview game. And I think a lot of people find other things to replace what religion brings to their worldview. So like, religion provides some important things for humans, right? It provides community, which I think is like, I'm always really hesitant to say anything is human nature aside from the basics of like, we generally want to stay alive, and most things that we do are like towards that in one way or another.
We need food, we need some shelter.
Yeah. But I think a sense of like structuring your experiences into narratives and social communities, I think are pretty fundamental to most humans throughout history. And religion is a really, really powerful way that people are provided that. And it also helps provide a story for why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who come away from that, or even people who like grow up as atheists, get the idea that if they don't have that, if they don't have religion doing that, that they don't have something else doing that.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of people will turn to like conspiracy theories, for example, or even their own atheism. There's this weird...
Yeah, I've seen that before, where people get so down the atheist rabbit hole where atheism becomes a religion. And that gets kind of strange, where it's like, your God has become there is no God, and you don't see the weird like hypocrisy of what you're doing.
Well, and it's hard because people say there's like a whole debate about atheism being a religion. And I think that debate kind of misses the point, because I think what the point is that other things fill the purpose for you that religion may have used to fill.
Sure.
And some of it is like the sense that you have some special received knowledge that other people don't, that you are somehow special and set apart. A lot of people's religions are that for them. But there are also a lot of other things that are that for people. And sometimes that becomes atheism, right? It's the center of their identity. It's how smart, how advanced, how moral I am, because of one specific thing I am not, without giving a whole lot of thought to the things that you are and the way that you move through the world that still might not actually be great for other people. Like there's no easy, like, I've left this one thing behind, or I found this one thing behind and now I'm good to go. And that's a really attractive idea. And I think if you look throughout human history, what we generally think of as religion, because I would even argue there are maybe some faith traditions that are not like non-mainstream faith traditions that maybe don't have this same problem, but thinking specifically of like Christianity and Judaism and Islam in a lot of ways. And I even think Judaism less so. But just the sense that there's some greater cosmic knowledge that I have access to that others don't, that sort of stuff. And people think the same thing. Like, I am so smart, I'm atheist. I'm in a country where 80% of people are Christians, and I'm one of the few who is smart enough to leave all of that behind. And it's the same sense of superiority that shortcuts your ability to like critically analyze the world around you and think in real ways about how you interact with it.
Yeah, I can agree with what you're saying. I think another part of it too is like the whole, going back to talking a little bit earlier about like the ability to just say, I don't know, like people, I think everybody is like, you realize you're going to die, and religion does offer some comfort where it's like, hey, I know what's happened to me after this, you know, whereas me, agnostic, I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't know where I'm going, what's happening. You know, do I go up to the sky? Do I go down to a pit? Do I exist in a plane? I don't know. It's going to happen. We'll find out.
You know, what's interesting about that for me too is that I'm not even 100% sure that's true, because I tend to find that when the shit really hits the fan, most of the like true believer Christians that I know or have interacted with are like just as afraid of dying as I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be like a visceral instinctual thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, you're confronted with like, you get the cancer diagnosis and you go back to whatever your spiritual belief is to say that like, okay, this isn't the end of me. And maybe there is some comfort there, you know,
right.
But I remember like my grandma, very, very hardcore right-wing, Pentecostal. And she used to say things like that. But then like when her friends would die and she was kind of confronting her own mortality, like I could see that was a thing
right.
for her. And it really made me think. I was like, is it, I don't want to try. I try really hard not to pretend like I know for sure what's going on in anyone else's head.
For
right?
sure.
But just from my interactions, it didn't seem like she was as comforted as she thought she would be by her spiritual beliefs. And I mean, you know, that's my experience in interacting with people. Maybe that's like not universal.
Yeah.
But I tend to think that sort of comfort is maybe not entirely illusory, but I don't think it's as much of a thing as a lot of people think. When people are like actually confronted by their mortality, I think generally speaking, they are just as scared as anyone else.
Yeah, I think just by instinct alone, like your fight or flight would kick in. It would just kind of be like a rabbit being stuck in a trap where you're just like, I got to get out of this. Like whatever I got to do, however I got to bark, whatever, you know, I don't see how you don't. I can't think of anybody being like, it's been a run, you know, it's okay.
Right.
I guess for shutting her down, right, guys? We had a good run.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, maybe I can imagine myself getting there if I'm 80 or 90.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you know what? Like, I would like to stay alive, but I've made it here.
Yeah.
And it's fine. You know, I don't know. And that's me speaking as someone who, like, you know, I've had a couple health scares here and there, but I also have not had to like truly confront my mortality in a way, looking back like, oh no, I could have died, you know? So like, maybe I'm talking out my ass because I've never been in that position, you know, like it's important to me to try to stay humble, at least on that level a little bit. I don't want to try to like go too hard at other people. 'Cause like, hopefully we are all doing our best to try to just like figure out the things that work best for us. And I don't want to be a jerk.
Yeah, me neither. And at the end of the day, it is the whole thing where it's like, look, we're all here. We're all inside our own heads. The only experience you get to have is the first person perspective that you're in. Just try to treat people nice and, I don't know, be cool about shit. That's at least what I try to do. Is like, I try to get stressed out about fucking people and their shit, and just realize like if they're being a dickhead, it's probably because they got something that they're dealing with that I don't even want to begin to get into.
Yeah, and I think what makes that hard is that we grew up in a culture that does not really encourage us to do really deep self-reflection like that. We grow up, I mean, you know, depending on our station in life, we get handed like narratives that we're supposed to have, right? And for a lot of us in the United States, frankly, it's that like, oh, we're the luckiest, bestest, smartest, freest people on earth. And then we just are never encouraged to think more broadly than that, right?
Like, why would I go to another country? It's not the best.
Right. That sort of thing.
I mean, why would I want to go see fucking Ireland? We have Arkansas.
Yes, very clearly the same thing.
Yeah. What the fuck? USA, USA.
And I think that's when I find people struggle with that the hardest is when it's people have not done a lot of work to try to find their own individual sense of identity. It's like, I get handed, I'm rich. My family's worked hard for my money, and that's the only narrative I know about my life. Mm-hmm. Or like, I have all of these advantages because I am white in a culture that disadvantages people who aren't. But I don't have to think about that, right? Because in my world, I'm the center of my world. Mm. And everyone else who is different from the default, which is me. That like our culture encourages that of people who are in privileged categories of one kind or another.
And we also don't get like critical thinking through the K through 12 system either.
Right.
Which is the other issue with that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, but,
no,
but
you're
immediately what I
right.
started thinking about as we're talking about that, like you're not, everything is like, can you answer a test question? Do you understand the math problem? Do you get, like when this war happened, or do you understand like what is a verb? What is a noun? It's like, cool. Okay. I got that. But like, what about thinking about myself, thinking about my actions? What happens if I do this? How does that affect others? And just critically analyzing situations like, you got to pay for that.
Yeah, to this day, the most valuable class that I took in high school that I still use the skills that I learned in every single day was a current events class that I took because I thought it would be an easy A, and I just like had an elective to fill in. And it was a teacher basically going through news articles, and she taught us how to like identify when someone is reporting facts, when someone is reporting their interpretation of the facts, their opinion, when they're trying to convince you of something, when they're trying to sell you something. And I use that every day. Like she was teaching us skepticism, right? Like, analyze what you're hearing, what you're reading, what you're seeing.
Think about it, process it. Don't take it at face value.
And that's like, I don't know where I would be if I hadn't have like, taken that elective as an easy A, because that's, I've done a lot of work since then, and I've been fortunate enough to know a lot of really smart people who have helped me move along that path. And my mom certainly like got me started a little bit, but in terms of like really, really critically thinking and analyzing stuff, it was that dumb elective that I took for an easy A in high school. Like it's wild.
Yours is way better than mine. Mine's typing.
That counts too, though.
Still use it daily.
Super practical skill.
Very like if I had not learned that, I think I'd be hurting right now. So yeah. So yeah. Shout out Coach Fusner for the typing class.
Hell yeah, Coach Fusner.
Well, look, let's transition a little bit here. Let's talk about so this is your first time on the show. Anytime somebody comes on the show first time, I like to get to know them kind of outside the subject you're coming to talk about. One of the first ways I was introduced to you, my wife was like, "Hey, Callie did this podcast talking about being in a band." And I was like, it's so cool. I love music forever, but never played in a band, but always mesmerized by it because I don't understand how people make the noises they do out of guitars or basses. It's, you make magic. You're up there doing wizard shit. I don't get it. But yeah, and so and then knowing that like that you were like into heavier stuff, and so I was like, all right, cool. This is something we could talk about. So when did you first get into heavy music, and like what drew you in? Like what was the Siren song that was like, oh, this is something I want to check out?
It's the cheesiest thing in the world.
Hit me with it.
Enter Sandman.
God damn it. It works. It just works.
Like
there's a reason they play this in NFL stadiums to this day.
Yeah. When I was really, really young, my best friend in the world was 2 or 3 years older than me. And so, and when you're in elementary school, 2 or 3 years might as well be an entire lifetime, right?
Exactly.
And I would go over to his house and he would just have on MTV. And I remember seeing the music video for Enter Sandman and just being like, my mind was blown. This is the coolest shit ever. And so I listened to the Black Album and I was just like, what is, like, of course I had heard music before then, but I had never gotten into a band or into music in any way really before I came across Metallica. And just went super deep. Like, we're going to talk about Star Trek later. I was a Metallica fan for a while, like I'm a Star Trek fan now. It was just like everything about my personality. And I decided I wanted to play guitar. I played violin for like 2 years because somebody told me that was like a stepping stone to learn how to play guitar.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Not the first instrument I would think, but also a very cool instrument to be able to play.
Yeah. And so, I got a guitar. I think I was 13 or 14 when I got my first guitar, and I just holed up in my bedroom learning how to play Metallica songs, and eventually other bands like Green Day, Alice in Chains, Sublime, lots of like mid to late 90s music that was like big then. And just that was like my whole thing for a minute. And I started playing with other people really just like a year or two after that. I was never in a band that played shows or anything like that until I was like 17 or 18. And it was very silly, awful music, like most people's first bands. And then I was in bands kind of nonstop until I was almost 30. And I started in a really crappy, like Slipknot, Korn, new metal wannabe band. Then I started playing more like metalcore, hardcore, more like traditional metal type stuff. I played in an electro pop band for a little bit. That's honestly my favorite music that I've ever helped make.
Really?
Yeah. Not my favorite band that I've been in. I loved the guys that I was in the band with. But the band that I did the most with was called I Am the Messenger. The band was around longer than I was in it. I was in I Am the Messenger for 2 or 3 years, but we actually we did tours, we played festivals, we had an indie record deal. And it was a real thing. And it was like all of our best friends, pile in a van, travel and playing shows, that sort of stuff. And so the podcast episode that you were talking about was me being like, once that was over with, I think I was like 26 when that band broke up, and I realized that I was probably done being serious, trying to make music a thing, like as a career or anything like that. And I had kind of accepted the fact that like, I'm just never going to feel that cool again. And I'm like grateful for that time because we got to do a lot of stuff that a lot of people dream about doing stuff that we got to do and never even get to that level. And we were never even really, I mean, we had a decent regional following and like we could go to Columbus and like 50 kids would show up, which is awesome, but not huge scale. Right. And I was just like, yeah, I'll never feel that cool again. Cause there's just like nothing like being on a stage with people like that and people screaming your lyrics at you. And like the thing that happens between people on stage is something super special. And finding roller derby again, like is almost kind of on the same level. So that was what that podcast episode was about. So yeah, time of my life I look back very fondly on, reminisce all the time.
What was it like? What's it like going in between different bands where like, at one point you're in this like new metal-ish band and then you transfer into a band that's more like a hardcore band. Like, how do you make that decision? Is that like what you're listening to at the time? Is that what you yourself are wanting to play? Is it the spot that's available? Like, how do you go between these two different genres?
It's kind of a little bit of all of it. Like, some of it was actually just like the people that I wanted to play in bands with, their interests were different. And my thing was always like, in retrospect, it's easy to see that music was probably never going to be my career because what I was really into was playing shows. I enjoyed writing music and I thought like, this is a cool thing that I have helped make. But if like what I stayed up all night thinking about was going on tour, playing shows, meeting people, hanging out, having those kinds of cool experiences. And so like the kind of music that I was writing and playing, obviously I wanted to enjoy it. I wasn't just going to be in a band that played music that I hated, but that was less important to me than playing music with people that I really loved and thought that I was easy to have a good time with. And so it wasn't so much a thing for me. Aside from the electro pop band that I was in, that was just kind of like a synergy thing of like, I was in a thrash metal band that ended and there was a guy who was in this like weird emo band that broke up and we just knew each other from show stuff. And he's like, oh, let me let you hear the stuff that I've been working on. And I was like, oh my God, I would love to play this. And so that just started and all of a sudden we were writing pop songs.
Nice.
Yeah.
How do you feel about so something that sometimes happens, you talk to people, and if you play them anything heavy, they're like, oh, it's heavy metal. And it's like, well, no, it is, but it's not. Actually, it's metalcore, it's hardcore, or, well, there's a difference between like thrash versus doom versus black. Like, how do you navigate those waters with people? Like, is there any genres that you absolutely hate, or is there stuff that you love everything that comes out of it? Like, how do you go between these worlds?
Not really. For me, a genre is much more of a descriptive thing than a prescriptive thing. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously there are tropes and things that you can pick out in one kind. Like, I can listen to like 3 or 4 different kinds of hardcore and probably tell you the subtle differences between them all that somebody who's not into it just may not pick up on, because it's not something they're attuned to or acculturated to. I think it's one thing when people are just like, it's not my thing. I don't really hear, like, it's screaming. I don't understand the lyrics. That doesn't appeal to me. Like, people are allowed to like different things. That's fine. It's when people are like sneering and condescending about it. Yeah. That's more what I have a problem with, because I'm like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that probably that person is into, that they know all of the nuances in, that I know nothing about. Mm-hmm. And they can understand why that thing is important to them. And hopefully they would understand why it's not to me, because it's just not my world. And I expect that sort of reciprocal respect, right?
Yes. I feel this way too. I feel this way, like, so right now with like the Taylor Swift thing, I don't understand people that are like, I fucking hate Taylor Swift. I'm like, she doesn't affect my world. Like, I don't care what she does. I'm not like, on one hand, I'm like, I'm not ever going to go to one of her concerts, but at the same time, I'm also never going to be like, oh my God, she's the worst thing in the world. It just doesn't exist for me.
I have such a hard time with people who make hating a thing or a person their personality.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, there's plenty of music that I don't like, and even maybe like some stuff that I'd have spicy opinions about, right? Like, I maybe have some spicy opinions about the way that heavy music is recorded today, and that's why I don't listen to a lot of it. But that's different from the, like, they did a thing I don't like, so they're wronging me personally. I think that's very silly. Like, I can just go find other things that I like, and I will just go do the things that I like and let people who enjoy that thing enjoy that thing.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting, like right now watching like the whole thing happen with Turnstile, where people are like, "Oh, they're awful," and it's like, well, no, they made like a really good album and like people dug, and they actually did a lot of stuff on that album, and they have been where it's like they're actually kind of changing what hardcore, like, what people expect from it. Because for a while, hardcore was like really stuck in a rut for a lot of bands, where it was just like, we're writing songs about the scene and our buddies in the scene, or people that stabbed us in the back in the scene. And it's like, right, but can we expand upon this? Like,
and either how we're straight edge and that's the coolest thing in the world, or we used to be and that was the dumbest thing we've ever done in our lives.
It's like, guys, like, I mean, I love Sick It All. They're great. It's been fun, but guys, it's like 30 years. Can we please, like, just, can we at least get like some post-punk in here, or just something to kind of freshen this up a little bit?
Yeah. For me, it's about the production. Like, everything is like computer grid perfect. It doesn't sound like people are playing anymore. And to be clear, like, I'm not moralizing about that, saying there's something morally wrong with that. It's just like not a style that I like listening to. Yeah. And so much heavy music is recorded that way. It's just like, it lacks dynamic range and it lacks personality for me. So it's tough for me. And that's actually why, like, I would even say like metal and hardcore type adjacent music is probably still my favorite genre of music, but it's probably the genre of music I listen to the least now. Yeah. Just because, like, every time I hear an album, I'm like, oh my God, that song sounds amazing. But like, they sound replaced and gridded the drummer, so it sounds like a computer's playing. Right. I bet that person is a great drummer, but I don't know that from listening to this recording. Yeah.
Yeah, I look at it kind of the same way I look at horror, where like I like horror movies and sci-fi movies, but then I'm like, man, there's a lot of just really shitty, bad horror and sci-fi movies. And I'm saying as somebody who likes them, because I recognize when it's good, but I can also recognize when it's bad, as opposed to somebody who just hates everything in general. It's just like, oh, horror movies, yeah, Halloween sucks. And it's like, oh, no, Halloween's good. You know, or like, let me show you Alien. Like, this is this really nice, like, marriage between sci-fi and horror, and it's going to make you feel creeped out.
Well, and I think this is a thing, we'll probably end up talking about this during Star Trek too, but one of the reasons why fandom is such an interesting cultural thing for me is the different ways that people engage in fandom. And this
Yes.
happens with music as much as it does anything else, but movies, sci-fi, the whole thing. There are, I think, two archetypes of fan, and not to say like every person fits clearly in one category or another, but I think there's two kind of archetypal approaches to fandom that you can apply to movies, music, any of that sort of thing.
Let's throw sports in there
And
too,
it's
because there's a lot
absolutely
of that
correct.
happens.
Yeah.
Which also cracks me up when the nerds, ooh, fucking sports ball, but then they get pissed when people make fun of like comic books or more. And it's like,
Right.
everybody, it's all the same
Same
shit.
shit.
Same shit.
It's nerdy shit either way. It's people who their fandom is about how much they love the thing and how much they want to share the thing with other people.
Check.
Versus how much smarter and cooler I am because I have good and smart opinions about a thing.
Yes.
So it's just as much about how much I hate other things and how smart I am because I hate the thing, especially if it's a thing a lot of people love and I'm smart enough to be the one talking shit about it and hating it, then I feel good and smart and important. Bringing it back to our earlier conversation about the way people engage with religion, the way people engage with philosophy, people engage in fandoms in almost the same ways. And you can generally tell like what it's about for people. And fundamentally, I cannot hang with people whose personalities are so much about the stuff that they hate.
Yeah.
There's plenty of stuff that I hate for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of person who loves everything.
Yeah.
But I would much rather spend my time like gushing about and sharing the things that I love.
Yeah.
With other people who like it in the same ways that I do, or maybe people who like it in different ways that can like show me the neat and cool way about the way they do things. And that's like a generative community-based approach to things. And that's just like so much of how I like to live my life.
Yeah, I would rather make my split like 70% me digging this thing and then 30% or less me bitching about the thing, as opposed to the flip of that where it's like people, it's like, oh no, I love this thing. It's like, do you? Because you spend a lot of time just yelling about it and being pissed off about it. It doesn't seem like you really like this thing.
Right. And that's exactly the thing, right? Because like, I think if you love a thing and it's your whole world,
Right.
of course you're going to have like strong, nuanced opinions about
yeah.
it. And I feel that way about Star Trek. There's lots of music stuff that I feel that way, but like fundamentally what it's about for me, cause like I'm an audio engineer by trade, right? Like, I make a podcast. My day job is in like corporate media podcasting. I do editing and mixing for a show. So like I have very strong, spicy podcast opinions. But like I would hate myself if all I did was like talk shit about the things that I hate. Like I would just rather share what I love with other people who love it.
Yeah, same. Agreed. Well, hey, let's shift tracks here real quick. Let's talk about something you deeply love.
Yes.
Let's talk Trek.
Let's talk Trek.
So this is my first time ever having a Star Trek person on the show. I know you're a big fan. Like, when and how did you find Star Trek?
I was in elementary school, like 4th or 5th grade.
Okay.
And I watched a Star Trek marathon, which is like,
Nice.
that's like probably a foreign concept for folks who are much younger than me, because like that's not really a thing in streaming. We binge watch, right?
I was going to say, yeah, I was going to translate and just be like, you just did a streaming binge.
Right.
And
yeah.
there it was.
Exactly. But it's like on cable late at night, there's a whole bunch of episodes playing back to back. And sometimes one of the cast members comes in doing interstitials between episodes to like talk like behind the scenes stuff.
Cool.
Or do, it's a very, very cool thing. And I just happened to turn on TV in the middle of a Star Trek marathon. And, as a kid, I didn't get into it for the deep reasons that I'm into it now as I approach 40, but it was like aliens and spaceships and big important sounding ideas and cool looking uniforms and futuristic technology and wild sci-fi adventures, and there was just something that just worked its way into my brain about that, and it just became most of my personality from then on.
So this was OG Star Trek. This was the original series.
No, this was Next Gen.
This is Next Gen. Okay,
Yeah, it was
okay.
while Next Gen was on the air. So if I'm remembering it correctly, I started watching as the 4th season of Next Gen aired, which folks will remember there was this legendary summer where Jean-Luc Picard had been assimilated by the Borg, and there were rumors that he might be leaving the show. And so they is he going to die?
Right. Are they
in the
writing
beginning
him
of
off?
season 4? Yeah. And I came into it like right around that time while that was happening. And I watched most of it, the rest of it as it aired. And I caught, reruns on staying up later than my bedtime at night, that sort of thing. And I watched DS9 as it aired. I watched the first couple of seasons of Voyager as it aired. Yeah, lots of my childhood.
Nice. Did you have anybody in the family that was able to relate to you on this, or were you just like the lone person that had discovered Star Trek? And was there any conversation at the dinner table? Was there any aunts, uncles, anybody else you're having these convos with?
I was an extremely lonely Star Trek fan as a kid. My stepdad kind of liked it, but he was made very uncomfortable by how into it I was because I wanted to talk about it a bunch. And he's like, oh my God, I just like watching this before bed. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, he was never that mean about it, but it's just, he was a very, very casual fan, and I was very, very, very into it. And so we still didn't super relate, and we didn't really get along that well anyways. And so like, I just don't think that connection was going to happen.
That wasn't helping anything?
Yeah. My mom was not a Star Trek fan, but was like supportive. Like, you're into a thing, you love a thing. I'll buy you the toys. I'll, take you to see the movies when they come out, that sort of thing. My grandma too. But the closest I ever came was in 5th grade. I was friends with a kid who liked Star Wars in the same way that I like Star Trek.
Okay. And
he was similarly a very lonely Star Wars fan. And so we had this very fun reciprocal friendship that it's like, well, you're the closest person I have to being able to share this with. And so we would have like fun, like fake fights about it sometimes. And then I was friends very, very briefly in like 6th, 7th grade with another kid who was really into Star Trek. And then we had a falling out, and I did not really have like a community of Star Trek fans to be a part of until like well into adulthood, like early to mid 30s. I started engaging with like Star Trek fandom and finding other people who were fans and people who loved it the way that I did and wanted to just talk about it and pick it apart endlessly the way that I do and stuff. So that's like relatively recent in my life.
I think this is something that young millennials and Gen Z never got to experience, was the fact that there were times where you would be into something, but you couldn't share it with other people because people were just like, what the fuck is that? And like, in trying to like find other people was so hard. We were talking earlier about, kind of like me, where I was like, kind of having more kind of like a live and let live philosophy. I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't fucking hurt me. I don't care. That's because like I came from a super small town where like everybody knew everybody's shit.
Yeah.
And everybody was judgmental about stuff. And, oh, did you hear what this person did? And I was just like, why are we living like this? Like, why can't we just be like, who cares? Who gives a shit? But at the same time, because of that, it was like, you would try to reach out to find somebody, be like, hey, I'm into this. People are like, what the fuck is that? I want to talk about that. And then you're kind of on your own little island where you're like, oh, this thing's so cool, but there's somebody to talk to. And then chat rooms happen. And it's like, oh my God, there's all these people I can talk to now and have the most in-depth conversations about shit I could ever want to. Thank you, the internet.
AOL chat rooms and AOL chat room roleplay specifically. I joined a Star Trek roleplay group.
Nice.
Where I don't even remember the name of our ship, but I was the oh God, what did I do on this ship? I think I was at the helm, so I was flying the ship.
Excellent.
And it was very, very extremely late 90s. So much fun though. And I think it being sci-fi is harder because like, sports nerdery and sci-fi nerdery are only superficially different, I think, in most ways. But I think it also matters which one is more like culturally accepted and appropriate, right? Because very few people think you're weird if you're into sports, even if they don't super share your love of sports.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that you are definitely more of an outcast if you're into. Sci-fi is generally one of those things. If you're into playing D&D, that sort of stuff, if you were part of a minority religion, there was another like, Jewish kids who were out on Jewish holidays before a lot of schools started letting, it was basically only the Christian holidays you got off.
Yep.
And so you would see like the Muslim kids and the Jewish kids were like, they were visibly doing a different thing. And so it was easy to pick on them.
And you didn't really know what it was and called, you're just like, what the hell are you guys doing?
And that's not to say that is the same experience as being like a sci-fi fan or anything like that. Very, very different thing. But like just the idea of like, everybody knows you're one of the weird ones kind of thing. And I actually, like, I leaned into it for a little bit. I think mostly just because I didn't have a choice. Like, I just leaned into being the weird kid because
you weren't going to stop liking Star Trek.
Well, and I also would like, I didn't have a problem hamming it up. Like in 7th or 8th grade, our teacher asked us to do a project where we explained how to do a thing. And it was like just super open-ended project like that. And I thought it would be really, really funny if I got in front of the class and taught them how to do a Klingon bonding ritual.
What?
Yeah. Basically, there's an episode where a young kid's mom dies, and Worf decides that he's going to bond with this kid to like help this kid heal. And there's this ritual called Rustai where you like bond and become part of your family. And so I was like, I'm going to show the class how to do this. I'm going to learn all the Klingon. I'm going to do my like Halloween store Klingon uniform, it's a whole thing. And my teacher was loving it. I don't know. I don't remember if she was a Star Trek fan or not, but I think she was just like, I'm really stoked that this kid is into this thing, whatever it is.
At the very least, you're committing to the bit. Like,
yes,
like,
absolutely.
You know, she's thinking that people are going to be like, here's how to tie your shoe. Here's how to make a sandwich. You're like, I'm going to talk about a Klingon bonding ritual. She's like, instant.
And like some kids were like chuckling and laughing, and I was kind of like chuckling and laughing because there was a part like I know this is ridiculous and silly, right? But it like legitimately hit me in the middle of doing that it was like, these people are not laughing with me. They're laughing at me. And that actually feels bad.
That fucking sucks.
Because it was a thing you will find among fans of Star Trek or fans of anything really. Like it's more than just a TV show. If it's something that you're really into, just like movies are more than movies, games are more than games, comics are more than comics to you. If it's something that's important to your life, it helped you through hard times. It helped you see the world in a new way, that sort of thing. And it becomes part of your identity. And I had like really like internalized that because like in a lot of ways, Star Trek taught me like filled in some of the gaps of like how to be a person and how to relate to other people. And that's like not to say anything bad about my mom. My mom's fantastic.
Sure.
But she was a single parent raising 3 kids. Right. Yeah. And so like some like deeper life lessons about morality and how to treat people and how to think about the ways that you interact with other people outside yourself. I learned a lot of that really, really important stuff from Star Trek. And so it's important and meaningful to me. And I didn't have a lot of self-confidence as a kid. Other people are laughing at that. I take it personally and it hurt my feelings. And it like really super didn't feel good. And that was also like kind of close to the time that I started figuring out that I was queer and trans. And so like, it was just like a whole big mishmash of like weird identity stuff that like everybody goes through at that age. But there were like some extra layers there. And so, yeah, I just kind of retreated back into my hole as a Star Trek fan. I was, really into music, and I had like friends who were into the same kind of music as me. I was still playing sports at that time. And so I had sports friends. And so like I had friends. The defining experience of like middle school and high school for me is that like there were a bunch of places I kind of fit, but no place I really entirely fit. And I know that's more than a lot of people have. And so I'm grateful for that because I had a friend group, I had great social experiences, but every one of those felt a little bit incomplete. Yeah. And I was like floundering, trying to find where my place was. And I didn't really have a solid spot.
You were able to float amongst the various groups, but you didn't have like a home spot where it's like, okay, this is the place where I fit in. And this is where I'm the cog that comfortably fits into this place.
Yeah, or just like the place where I can comfortably bring the entirety of myself forward.
okay.
Right. So like among my music friends, if I want to talk about all my music obsessions, great. They're all there for that. Right. But then if I want to talk about this thing that happened on Voyager last week, they're all
Right.
like, I have no idea what you're talking about, you fucking dork.
Got it.
And nobody was that mean, but it's like kids make it known. Like when you're not one of the cool kids, you're like visibly one of the weird ones. It's like you start getting that idea that like, yeah, these people like me, but they don't like this thing. And so this part of me is not welcome here.
Yeah.
And and so like when I played sports, everybody thought it was weird that I was into Star Trek, and they thought it was weird that I was into like hardcore music, and like kind of vice versa for all of those groups. And it just it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. But I will say though, now as an adult, I do like the ability to float amongst groups and not have one spot where I'm like, okay, I'm going to be like, I'm going to do everything here in this one same spot. So for example, like I have my friends that like, we have UFC night every month, and it's just like, you guys, this is the thing we connect over. There's some other stuff we overlap on, but this is our main thing. And I'm just glad I got you guys, because if I don't, and I start talking about like who's fighting for the middleweight title, or if I reference something like, an announcer like Michael Bisping or something like that, and people just like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this? And I'm like,
Right.
well, okay. Whereas I got like my group of like 3 dudes that are like super hardcore into it. I'm like, all right, cool. We're friends. We all are into this same dorky thing on a very deep level. We've all watched this for over 2 decades now. We can like pull things from like pride fights from the early 2000s, and we all have like the same base to be like, oh yeah, I totally remember that. So it is nice to have that. That's something, I don't know, like this is a weird side rant, but like something I'm growing with right now as I age is like, I worry about losing connection with friends and people. And they talk about that like with men, where like men who have bigger social circles tend to live longer, because over time we just start to I don't know, quiet down. We just stop talking as much, and we just kind of insulate. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, but I feel myself doing that a lot. There's a lot of times where I'd rather stay in my house and not go anywhere as opposed to go out. And I don't know, it's just something that I find weird, and I'm trying to figure out like, is this real or is this not?
Yeah, I think the difference for me with that dynamic between being a kid and being an adult is that now I feel like I have a pretty good sense of who I am. And as like a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, even if you think you do, you don't.
You don't.
And now I think the difference is like, obviously I don't talk my friends' ears off about Star Trek if they are not also Star Trek fans. But I also, like, if it makes sense to talk about that in a context somewhere, like I go to the big Star Trek convention in Las Vegas every year, and I can talk about going to that convention with my derby friends who aren't Star Trek fans. And I don't have to feel like afraid that they don't want to hear about that. They don't care about that, right? Like they're interested in the things that happen, and they don't have to be interested in the same way that I am. Just like, my friends who are into other sports, like I want to hear them talk about their thing, because if I love you, I want to love you. I want to at least know your things,
Right.
and I want to be familiar with your things, even if I don't necessarily love them myself, because it's part of who you are.
Right.
And I think as an adult, it's a lot easier to see that. And so that it makes it more comfortable. Like I'm among my derby friends, but I don't have to hide the fact that I'm a giant Star Trek nerd. Or I'm among my Star Trek fandom friends, and I don't have to hide being queer or being trans. If those things come up, it's okay for those things to come up too, because that's like the whole of who I am. And I think that really only gets easy to do if you have a really solid sense of your own identity. And I'm fortunate enough now that as I approach 40, I feel like I've kind of started to get there. And so I just feel a lot more comfortable in my skin. And I've cultivated a good social group where I don't have to worry about that. Like, oh God, I really love Callie, but I wish they would shut the fuck up about Klingon. Like, I don't have to worry about that so much.
Well, I was going to say it for later in the show. We're here at the moment. Let's talk about this. What is the Star Trek fandom like? Is it a very just? Actually, I'm not going to even put anything in front of that. Just what is the Star Trek fandom like across the board?
I think it's a pretty solid cross section of society in general. It's, it's been around almost 60 years in different TV shows and movies and even like novels and that sort of thing. There's something for a little bit of everyone. And so when I go to a Star Trek convention and I see and conventions by their nature are not necessarily a good cross section because it's expensive to go to conventions. And so you're only like the people who have the means to be able to go to conventions. That's a very specific subset of fandoms. Cause it's an expensive thing to do. But even engaging in like some of the online communities and stuff like that, it's, I have, some of my favorite like cross-generational friendships where I'm friends with people who are significantly younger than me or in the Star Trek fandom, who are like, they're into Star Trek exactly the same way that I am, but they're like in their early 20s. And that's cool as shit. Right. But also like some folks that are like decades older than me, all across the political spectrum. I think if I had, it probably skews like United States liberal-ish, but that's not even a hard and fast thing. Gene Roddenberry was very explicitly a communist. That is not a thing he made a secret of, but I think we can talk about the show and the ideals it espoused and whether or not it always lived up to those values is an open conversation. But it really is a pretty general cross section of society, somewhat racially diverse, somewhat gender diverse, lots of queer and trans folks, because there's so much good allegory for just like feeling othered. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with aliens that like will get past the suits where it's like, this is the gay episode, but we don't say gay at all, but it's like very clearly what we're talking about. So yeah, it's a very like wide variety of folks.
Do you, I mean, and what I do want to say, like Star Trek is a huge thing. It's an international thing. People know about it across the world. But do you like the fact that it's a smaller fan group than say something like Star Wars, which is much bigger and sometimes with that comes problems?
Yeah. Pros and cons. I think there's toxicity in every group of people. And I don't want to be like Pollyanna-ish about like, oh, the Star Trek fandom's great. It's full of only wonderful people who never are awful to each other, because that's just not real. It's hard because you worry about like when something gets super, super big and there's lots and lots of money to be made, you worry about someone coming in whose only motivation is the money and moving it away from the thing that made you love it in the first place. And I, with something as big as Star Trek or Star Wars or anything else you can be a fan of, like, I don't think that's an illegitimate worry to have. So yeah, I don't know. I think what I like is the ability to connect with other people that I have other things in common with as well. Like hanging out with other queer Star Trek fans is a special subset of experience for me. Even like queer roller derby players who are also Star Trek fans, like you can like work your way down into specificity, and just like you end up sharing more and more cultural contexts. And I think if there's one thing that I've experienced an overrepresentation of in the Star Trek fandom is that like we're all kind of weirdos in one way or another. And sometimes that's just mostly in that like we're obsessed with this silly space show.
For sure.
But a lot of it's like neurodivergence, right? Like there are characters that my autistic friends see on Star Trek where they never say the word autistic, but the character is very much coded with those kinds of traits. That's not my experience, but I have ADHD, and there's some really, really good stuff about that specific kind of neurodivergence in there that I can meet somebody else who has the same issues that I do, and we can gush about how much we love Data for that, or how much we love Worf, or all of those different things. You can map your life experience to this weird, silly thing that happens in a TV show somewhere, and it helps give like a thing that humans, I think, have a tendency to do. I talked earlier about like, I really don't like the phrase human nature because I think most things are actually cultural nature and not human nature. But I think narrative is one of those things that is part of a basic human thing, organizing our life into a story with a narrative arc. And we can have problems when we go too far into that and we start trying to make our lives match fiction. But I think we can do some really cool things if we can build stories that help people feel seen and help people analyze and work through those experiences in ways that are external to themselves. And sci-fi is a really great way to do that because you're imagining like fantastic technologies and fantastic worlds and aliens. And so you can play around with a lot of things that are like abstracted one step from the real world. So it short circuits a little bit of your like, well, this can't be real. So it helps you imagine things that are better.
I got two things I want to go back to from what you just said there. One thing I want to hit upon is what you were talking about like finding people like within the group that are also into another thing that you're into. I agree with that as well. It's definitely something where like I think that, you know, from being involved in stuff like roller derby or being involved in stuff like jujitsu or like doing weightlifting, like I'm like, I like all three of these things. And then I would find somebody in those groups where it's like, oh, hey, you're also in the same kind of music I'm into. All right, awesome. We got that. Or, oh, you're also a fan of this team. Cool. Now we're buddies. Or, oh, you play video games. Oh, great. We can talk about this now. And you start, you're like, okay, now we not just have one connection. I got two connections, three connections. And, you know, you find those friendships because they are the people that they're into the shit that you are.
Yeah. And I think if you're into one thing or another, there's probably a root reason for that may not necessarily be directly about the thing, but if I'm into Star Trek because I like thinking about big moral questions, one of the reasons that I love it, there are plenty of other Star Trek fans who are also into that for that reason. And so we connect, the connection ends up being deeper than us just liking a TV show because it's a trait that we share that has led us both to liking the thing. And I think across any interest that maps. And so I think a lot of people kind of talk down those kinds of connections as maybe being superficial. And I mean, I think they can be, right?
Sure, but
because I've certainly met Star Trek fans that I would prefer to never meet again.
Right.
but there might also be something deeper there. Like
exactly.
There's something about you that makes you like jujitsu, and there's probably that same thing in a lot of other people, and that can help you make connections that are deeper than just liking a martial art or being into a martial art.
Yeah. And then I want to talk about this, and I'm going to try to make this the last Star Wars, Star Trek question. But I do think this is something where, just to kind of frame this a little bit, I need some help, some Star Wars help here.
Yeah.
Has Star Trek ever went through a thing like with Star Wars where there's a large section of the Star Trek community that like hates a movie or a series of movie, or everything they're putting out new is shitty trash? Like, does this also happen in this fandom?
Every single time
Really?
there's something new.
Okay.
Yeah. And people have a very, very short cultural memory because a lot of people think that started with Star Trek Discovery, and it did not.
Okay.
It started with Star Trek The Next Generation.
Really?
Yeah. There were people, the same sort of gatekeeping. This isn't real Star Trek. They're going to ruin it. This is bullshit, whatever. People were saying that about Star Trek The Next Generation. When Star Trek Voyager came out, there was some pretty explicit racism involved in it, just like there is with a lot of fandom stuff today. Because Tuvok, Vulcan character, most people know Spock, the pointy-eared guy from the original series. Tuvok is a Vulcan character played by Tim Russ, who's black. And there was like a whole bunch of people losing their shit on message boards. Vulcans can't be black. The silliest shit, right? But this is like in the 90s, and people have a short cultural memory for things like that, because it's like, oh, I like that Star Trek. That Star Trek didn't threaten me, so it's fine. But this Star Trek does threaten me because, like, I'm okay with having some black guys on the show, but as soon as a black woman is the lead, now I'm threatened. And that's exactly not all of what happened with Star Trek, but that's a large part of what happened with Star Trek Discovery. Is like, you hear people say things and they're not explicitly saying it, but if you look at the pattern of their takes, it's, I am threatened by the fact that a black woman is the lead of this show, is what a lot of it came down to. Along with the very normal, like, my entire personality is that I hate new things.
Okay.
The old stuff is better. And 10 years from now, when the next new thing is out, I'll always have liked the other thing because it's the old stuff now. It's extremely silly. But yeah, I think that's a pretty universal fandom thing. I mean, I was talking about Metallica earlier, right? Like, we all remember Load and Reload if we were into Metallica.
Yeah, well,
right? Like, they cut their hair and they don't play metal anymore.
Exactly.
Sellouts.
As soon as they cut the hair, that's when everything stopped. That was the day the music died.
Yeah. And it's every time.
Yeah.
With Star Trek. It's very silly.
And it's weird to me. I don't get the race or sex thing when it comes to something like sci-fi, where it's like, it's fucking space. Who knows what could happen? I mean, you could have like a fucking blue alien pilot and shit. Like, it makes sense on any level, you know? Like, that makes sense. Like, I could see like having a thing where it's like, all right, it's like, it's a World War I movie and like they're leading, like, a black lady is now the general of Germany, and I'd be like, that doesn't make sense. But like, but like, we're talking fucking Star Trek here, like,
right. It is the 23rd century, and we are on a starship light years from Earth, my friends.
Like, I feel like really anybody can captain this thing.
We are making shit up, and a black woman being in charge is like a thing that absolutely should happen in a Star Trek show, because it had not up until that point, outside of some very small examples of like side characters. And I mean, it really is about the dynamic I was talking about earlier, where, you know, this thing is special to me because it makes me feel at the center of the universe. And as soon as it steps just a little too far outside that, where I'm being genuinely challenged by it, now it's bad and I'm threatened. And it's the like loving Star Trek because of the specific thing it is to you, not because of the thing it actually is. And I think we should like things for all of those reasons. But like, hopefully we like these things because they help us grow. They help us move through the world, along with like, hopefully being entertaining.
Something I've heard of Star Trek before is that like, it is a show that is pretty progressive, looks at stuff culturally, and you've kind of hit upon some of that. Like, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think Star Trek is this thing that has tended to like move in a left direction?
Well, it's largely because that was what Gene Roddenberry was originally trying to show. He was the point was to show humanity at a point where we're at least on Earth, we're living in a post-scarcity society. Racism doesn't exist anymore. Poverty doesn't exist anymore. We've solved most of those big cultural problems, and now we're exploring the galaxy, trying to better ourselves and our knowledge of the world. There were some ways that he did that were really, really important and progressive. Having Nichelle Nichols on the bridge was a big, big thing, like legitimately very, very important. But he was also like a womanizing sexist. So like, some of the gender politics aren't that great. There's some stuff about race that is really not great. There's an episode of The Next Generation that relies on essentially stereotypes of black people being sexual predators.
Oh shit!
Like, that's a little oversimplifying it, but it's like the second or third episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation is like that, and so it's
that's
like,
a weird way to kick off a series.
It's real bad. Like, it's real bad. Like, horrifically.
Holy
bad.
Shit!
Yeah. But ultimately, Gene Roddenberry's idea was envisioning a progressive future, not a perfect one, because he was not a perfect guy. And in some ways was like legitimately not great. Like, he tried to ruin someone's career because she wouldn't sleep with him. Like, bad stuff, no doubt. But that is kind of the aspiration, is like a time where poverty doesn't exist, a time where racism doesn't exist, a thing where people are like generally cool to be whoever they happen to be, and that those kinds of barriers won't exist, hopefully, at some point in the future. And when Star Trek is at its best, it hopefully shows some of the ways that we get to that world, because over time they start to show some of the cracks. Like, Starfleet are supposed to be the good guys, but like the Badmiral is a trope in Star Trek where like the captain and the crew of the Enterprise or Voyager or Deep Space Nine or you know, whoever the crew is, like they're the good guys trying to do the right thing, but like the admirals are doing the bad thing and they have to like fight against Starfleet to do that. And so you start to see a little bit of the cracks in the utopia. In Star Trek Enterprise, there was a storyline that was like very, very post 9/11 xenophobia that was really? Not always great. Yeah. But like it also showed like people on Earth being racist and xenophobic towards aliens because Earth had been attacked. Like a very present day thing that happens. And there was some controversy, like Earth is supposed to be past that in the future. But like, I think it's safe to say that some kind of bias will probably be like problems that we are like, I think those things will change over time, but even at our best, I think we're going to have failings like that we're trying to work past. And what Star Trek is often trying to do is using like metaphor and allegory and people who aren't humans to sort of sneakily tell stories about human problems. They invented a whole alien taboo thing to talk about being gay.
Oh, really?
It's
wait, like the aliens on the show did, or like a group of aliens like made it so you couldn't say gay?
No. So
wait, or the aliens in Florida?
Oh God, we laugh so we don't cry. So it's the 90s, right? And being openly gay on a TV show is just like not a thing that you're going to be able to do easily.
Yeah. At that time, it was like very groundbreaking. It was like, hey, Ellen's gay. And looking back on it, it's like, yeah, obviously. But at the time, it was a whole new world.
And so in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I'll try to not go too far out on this.
Gotcha.
In Star Trek Deep Space Nine, there is a race of people called the Trill. A subset of these people have these symbionts inserted in their bellies that carry memories from previous lifetimes. So if there's one that lives inside you, when you die, it gets taken out of you and put into someone else. Okay. That person has all of your memories.
Whoa.
And all of the memories from the people who carry the symbiont beforehand. And it's a way to keep cultural knowledge alive longer than just like person to person or reading books or that sort of thing, right? And Jadzia Dax, one of the characters, encounters someone who like 2 or 3 hosts ago, what she was married to.
Okay.
So the symbiont had been passed down into her. This other symbiont had been passed down into this other person. When they were married, they were visibly a heterosexual couple, a man and a woman. Now symbionts were in 2 women.
Interesting. Okay.
They encountered each other. They're still in love.
Okay.
So the way you get the suits to let you put that on TV is that it's an alien thing. We're not talking about gay people because they were man and woman when they were married before.
Right.
But it is a fundamentally queer story. And so Star Trek would do clever things like that to work those stories in. And it gave us, in Deep Space Nine, there's a scene where 2 women kiss on screen. And they had to invent this allegory taboo thing to please the suits. So it's not too explicitly gay, but that is very much what they were doing. And it was groundbreaking at the time. It's like pretty banal today.
Sure.
But it was a groundbreaking thing at the time. And when Star Trek is at its best, it's doing that kind of thing, asking really important moral questions. Deep Space Nine in particular was really good because a lot of the original series and Next Generation was like, we are moral, virtuous people moving out into a galaxy that is not, and we're going to move on from planet to planet, solving problems and making things better for people. In Deep Space Nine, we're on a space station, and we have to live with the consequences of our decision because we're not going anywhere. And so you started to get to see a little bit more of the morally gray stuff. Like, at what point do you sacrifice your morality for survival? really, really big, important questions like that are super relevant to real life, but they're told through the lens of like aliens and lasers and spaceships and wormholes. And
this is so interesting that this show is doing all this with these really like big topics and like stuff to think about. Whereas, normally when we think of sci-fi, it's just like ship go fast in space, thing go boom, aliens show up, laser sword. This is way beyond that.
Yeah, and I think I hate that that's the vision of sci-fi, because I think sci-fi always aspires to be more than that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it doesn't achieve that, to be sure. But I mean, one of the reasons that we do sci-fi is because it helps us imagine contexts that aren't our own. Mm-hmm. And like, there's the dorky side of me that is like, ooh, replicators and transporters and warp drive. That's cool. Mm-hmm. And it's as superficial as that. But it helps you imagine bigger things than that. Talking about a philosophy podcast, right? We're in a universe where a teleporter exists.
Exactly.
One part of you is destroyed, transmitted to another. Is that still you? Deep philosophical questions, right? So it's a bunch of different versions of things like that you can like take back and apply to your life. And it can actually make a difference to how you see the world, how you move through the world, how you treat other people. And, sometimes it's just, spaceship go boom, lasers, hot aliens.
Yeah. You can also go down the fun rabbit hole of the weird pseudoscience of the sci-fi world, where it's like, in this world, this does make sense, to where like, well, how does like a teleporter work? Don't worry about it. It works here,
Yeah. And technobabbles, the technobabble, there's like 1.31 gigawatts, some dilithium crystals, and the thing goes. That makes sense, right?
Yeah. Or like looking at stuff where it's like, okay, so in Star Trek, we can teleport and we can keep our clothes on, but in Terminator, if you go back in time, you got to be naked because you can't bring guns back. And it's like, okay, sure. I mean, I guess, yeah, everybody's got their rules.
Right. And what's the reason for that? Oh, so Arnold Schwarzenegger can be mostly naked on screen. That's the in-universe, out-universe explanations. It's the whole thing.
And not bring a laser cannon back and make this the equivalent of Bambi versus Godzilla, the greatest 3-page comic ever. Because if he comes back with a laser gun, Sarah Connor's kind of gone pretty quickly.
Right.
Well, so we're talking characters here. Let's talk about this. Do you have a favorite Star Trek character?
How much time do we have? I think if I had to pick...
Phaser to head. Phaser to head. You got to pick one.
Is it set to stun or kill?
You know what it's set to.
Okay, that's fair. This is hard because this is just so deeply my world. Let me talk about the first Star Trek character I ever truly fell in love with. We'll start there.
Toss it.
Jean-Luc Picard.
Very good. And
it is because I grew up without a father figure in my life. My stepdad was around, but he and I did not get along. He was not ready to become a parent, and was just frankly terrible at it. And I hated him for it at the time. I have a bit more of a nuanced view as an adult.
Okay.
I still don't talk to him. I still don't like him very much.
Fair enough.
And my mom was great. Like, I want to like be very, very clear. My mom is incredible. But I had a parent, and Jean-Luc Picard was someone who had a very clear sense of right and wrong. And it was a sense of right and wrong that felt correct to me, in that curiosity is a value. We are interested in things that are different. We're not afraid of things that are different. We move through the world with integrity. We don't lie to people. We don't cheat. We don't hurt people. We respect people. We stand up for what matters. We leave room for people to be messy and get better. We hold people accountable when they're not being their best, but we don't throw them away when they're not being their best. All of those sorts of things. Like I've learned those values in lots of different ways from other things. But if I had to, like, the first time that I was really experienced it, especially someone in a position of authority who was like, I'm the captain of a star. I could get away with being a colossal dick if I wanted to, but like, that's not who I am. That's not how I want to move through the world. And so he kind of became a stand-in father figure for me as a kid. And I took it seriously. Like Captain Picard told me to be honest, so I'm going to be honest, that kind of thing. And then I started to fall in love with the characters who were the stand-ins for the Misfits.
Okay.
So you have Data, who is an android who doesn't experience emotions the way humans do. And as a kid who knew I was weird in a couple of different ways, but couldn't quite say why, I identified with him a lot because it was like, oh, like I thought I was doing the social script right, but it didn't work. And I don't really understand why it didn't work. There's Worf, who was orphaned. He's a Klingon. He was orphaned from his parents, adopted by humans, so grew up in a culture that was very much not his own.
Yeah.
So there's really, really important racial dynamics there that that my black friends are very, 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 very attached to. For me, my connection was more just like, he is a person who is just like visibly different. Sometimes people don't know how to handle him, and sometimes like things just don't work between him and other people because they're different. And that's an experience that I had. And then Captain Sisko from Deep Space Nine and Captain Janeway from Voyager both have a level of care and compassion more explicitly for their crew than Picard did. And so they became role models for me in ways that are like, you can move with integrity, you can stand up for the things that matter, but like you're also allowed to be a human being who like explicitly cares for other people. You don't have to hide your feelings, because that's a thing that Picard does a lot, is he just like very stoic, has to like hide himself.
Captain of the ship, taking care of shit, making life or death decisions, but at the same time you got to stand by those and not you got to, on some level you got to be a rock. Like when shit's going wrong, you got to be like, no, we're fine, and it's okay. And you need that guy sometimes.
Yep. And then in modern Star Trek, I think the characters that I identify with the most are actually characters from Lower Decks, which is the comedy like cartoon show.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this. Yeah.
And it's two of the characters explicitly, Rutherford and Tendi, because they're just unabashedly nerds. They love the things they love. They don't have a lot of patience for trying to hide that or pretend that they're not the people that they are. They're just unabashedly in love with what they do. And I always want to be unabashedly in love with what I do. I want to be a dork. I want to be silly, but I want to be competent. Like I want to be good at the stuff that I do. And that's one of the reasons I think that show is so much deeper than anyone gives it credit for. Like it is very funny. It's very self-referential. It's like Star Trek fans making fun of other Star Trek fans in a way that we're all laughing together.
Everybody's in on the joke.
Yeah.
And you're not being made fun of, but everybody recognizes what the joke is, and that's why it's funny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, and that's like, I mean, that's barely scratching the surface of the ways that I like deeply, deeply identify with the characters in this show. Because I think one thing that Star Trek historically does well is writing the misfits and really digging into the ways that they don't quite fit into the world around them. And I was talking earlier about that was like very much my experience of middle school and high school. It's like, it's not that I didn't fit in anywhere and I didn't have any friends. I was very much part of a group. I was like loved and supported and cared for, but I never quite wholly fit in. And I had some like weird, uncomfortable, awkward, and maybe even traumatic experiences because of that. And you see that play out in a bunch of different ways across Star Trek. And most of the time, the vibe very much is like when that happens, it's like, let's figure this out together. Like, let's figure out how to understand each other better so we can be better for each other. And I learned a lot of that dynamic from watching all of those different stories play out.
Where does Riker fall into this as normie hot dude? Like, where does he fall into like all the misfits?
You think Riker's a normie? That's cute.
From the outside looking in, he's just a guy with a beard that's always number two, and is just like he's like the most normal looking dude. Is he not normie?
So it depends on which part of the Star Trek fandom you're part of. To be honest, most of the ways that I identify with Riker is that he is unabashedly horny, and so am I.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
That's Riker's move. Like Riker's
yeah.
always hitting on everybody.
Yep, he is always after some kind of tale, alien or human.
Whatever,
Like,
just throwing it out there.
But also in a way that I wouldn't say always comes across in a wholesome way, but for the most part comes across in a way that is like, in some ways, a model that like you don't actually have to be a creep to be horny and like to have sex. There's one episode specifically where there is a member of an alien culture who is very used to being a servant in the station in life that she is born into, and she and Riker start to develop a connection with one another, and she just throws herself at him like, let's have sex. And Riker realizes that she's doing the servant thing, and he stops and he's like, no, I don't want to do this unless we're doing it as equals. I only want this as much as you do. And I want you to want it because you do, not because you're trying to please me. And like revolutionary sexual politics in the 90s, right? And, you know, sometimes he does creepy stuff, kisses women without consent, which is not a great thing. No one should do that. So definitely not a perfect representation of that. But also someone who is very much in a position of authority, still definitely cares about the people under his command, but is also the very stereotypical, like, you know, put my foot up on a thing, you know, hand on my knee, just looking the part, kind of like Captain Morgan a little bit.
Is he kind of a split of so are him and Picard kind of a split of like William Shatner, where it's like he got Shatner's horniness, whereas the leadership ability went to Picard?
Kinda, although I think Kirk gets a bad rap because Shatner sucks.
Yeah.
Kirk is a thoughtful, compassionate, very, very smart leader. Like, he is absolutely a horn dog, to be clear. Like, let's not erase that part of my friend Captain Kirk. But if you like go back and watch the original series, there's the notion of Captain Kirk as like a cowboy who just like didn't give a fuck and did whatever he wanted. And like sometimes that happens for sure. But if you hear him talk, like, you know, Shatner overacts, whatever. But he was a very, very smart, thoughtful, and compassionate leader as well. And I don't think he gets quite enough credit for that.
Oh, nice. All right, so let's do this. Talking about favorite characters, do you have a favorite vessel?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Enterprise E from the Star Trek The Next Generation movies.
Oh, yeah.
So the Enterprise D that we all know from Star Trek The Next Generation is in Star Trek Generations, which is the first TNG movie, and gets destroyed in that movie. And so the 3 Next Generation movies have the Enterprise E. It's a Sovereign class, which is like the new hotness and at the time that it happens. And it's just like the peak 90s sci-fi design. It looks like a luxury car from the 90s, but not like the boxy, cheesy ones. It's just like so elegant and powerful. And like the way that they do the interior design, it's like really cool grays and reds. And also, like, if I'm being honest, it was like seeing it on the big screen when I was a kid, like seeing the movies come out and actually going to the movie theater and being able to watch Star Trek on the, like, that was a huge thing for me. Cause I hadn't seen any of the original series movies except like I saw them on TV, but I didn't see them in theaters. But yeah, the Enterprise E for sure. And then also the Defiant from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So Deep Space Nine is a space station. And when they start out, the only craft they have to get around are like little shuttlecrafts.
Okay. And
one of the things that DS9 did partway through its run to give them a little bit more mobility so they could tell other kinds of stories was they got a starship called the Defiant.
Cool.
Built specifically to fight the Borg. Very like no frills. You're in bunks. The replicators don't do much. There's barely a sick bay. But just like a super tough little battleship. And it's got spunk and personality, and I adore it for that.
That's kind of cool, though. The idea of like having an Enterprise that or ship of that style that like is so not what you're used to seeing. You know,
Exactly.
it's kind of like in the Spider-Man, the new Spider-Verse movie, where like you get like Punk Spider-Man, and it's like there's enough there to realize what this is, but it's so different from what I'm used to. This is so cool.
Yeah, and it like, and I've not seen that movie, but I'm sure like that version of that character exists for a very specific reason, right? It like serves some kind of narrative purpose that the other character didn't. And I think the Defiant does that because like in Next Generation and even the original series, like the Enterprise is kind of not so much in the original series, but in Next Gen, really, the ship is like a luxury liner. It's like exploring space on a cruise ship, which is like not uncool, to be clear, but like not everyone in the Star Trek universe is living like that. And so like, what are the other things going on in this universe? And what are like the other kinds of experiences people have in Starfleet if you're not on the flagship of the Federation? That's the pinnacle of luxury and all of that sort of stuff. It just like adds an extra dimension to the universe that makes it feel more real.
Yeah, I like those stories. I like no, damn it, I'm gonna do it. One of
You're about to do Star Wars thing, aren't you? You are over your quota, my friend.
Sorry, I think this is the third time. I think it's the third one. But those are honestly right now the Star Wars stories I am interested in. Is the stuff that exists outside of the Skywalker saga. Like I just don't give a shit about Darth Vader and Luke and Rey and all this and who I don't care. I just want stories like stuff like Mandalorian or stuff like what was the show that came out that was like them and it began with an A. I forget.
Andor?
Andor, yeah.
Oh my God. Andor is some of the best TV that's been made recently. It's so good.
Yeah, that's the stuff I want to watch. I want to watch the stuff that's not the big hero stuff. I want to just see the people that live in a world because I've seen it enough now where I'm like, give me these other stories. And I think that's sometimes fun when you get those stories.
Well, and I also think, the thing that I love about Andor is it is unabashedly political and extremely radical in its politics.
Which is wild coming from Disney.
Yeah. It's very wild, but very good that happens. And some newer Star Trek is like that. It feels maybe less radical, but like Discovery in particular it pushes boundaries in ways that some of the other newer shows don't. And I mean, like, I like all kinds of, like, campy, silly Star Trek is very good for me as well. But also, like, big, important moral question, like, maintaining connections with people and all of that sort of stuff is also a great thing. And I love it when shows take risks and push boundaries like that.
Agreed. I do like when people start to try some stuff where it's like, all right, let's get a bit outside the comfort zone and try something new. I don't like if it's like, all right, we're just constantly going to keep trying to do new stuff. It's like, okay, like, give me a balance here.
But, yeah. It's got to be recognizable.
Make it make sense to the world that it's in.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yes, please keep looking for new shit. So I'm not just watching the same old, same old.
Right. Exactly.
Do you have a ship or a vessel that you hate? Is there anything you're like, this design fucking sucks, or these things are annoying, or it's comical to look at?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if I like really, really racked my brain for a while, I could find some kind of one-off alien ship that I'm like, oh, that's silly. Why did we do that? But generally speaking, I love the aesthetic of Star Trek ship design. And through most of the series and movies, the designs have been like consistently of a style that I really love the aesthetic. And there are some things that I maybe like more or less about different versions of them, but not really any that I outright hate, I don't think.
I would really love to see like what their branding looks like, or how they determine like what is in the Star Trek world, especially as you get new shows. And it's like, all right, how do we keep this to where it makes sense to what's come before, but at the same time we do something a little different? And I feel like they've done a good job of doing that, of making like, because whenever I see anything Star Trek pop up, I'm like, yeah, that's Star Trek. Like I instantly recognize it. Like there's nothing there that I'm like, oh, that's not it. Like it is it.
Yeah, and I think that like comes back to having people in charge who genuinely love the thing.
Yep.
And I don't always love everything that they do with every series and story, but I think it's pretty indisputable that the people who are in charge of making Star Trek now genuinely love Star Trek, and they want to do new things, but they don't want to do it while completely forgetting where it came from. So, Mike McMahon, the showrunner for Lower Decks, the reason that he got noticed as a writer was for Star Trek was because he had a funny Twitter account, Star Trek TNG Season 8, where he would tweet out funny ideas for a hypothetical Season 8 of Star Trek The Next Generation. So like this is a guy who deeply, deeply cares about the source material. Terry Matalas, one of the showrunners for Star Trek Picard, and Picard is probably my least favorite of the new Star Trek series. Really? But like longtime Star Trek fan, worked on Enterprise. So he's been like in the world since the early 2000s, undisputably loves the thing and wants to honor it. And I think like, I don't always love what he has done with it, but undisputably, like he is a fan. He is one of us.
At the end of the day, you can at least hang your hat on the fact this guy cares and he's trying.
Yeah.
Like it's not just for the paycheck. Like there's investment here.
Yeah. And all the way down, like, I mean, a lot of the designers for the newer Star Trek are people who did work on older Star Trek. And so it's like, it's not even just let's look at all the reference drawings and do the thing. It's people who were doing Star Trek in the 90s are doing some of the production design work now. And so that I think helps it give a sense of continuity that makes it feel very much of the same universe, even though it's like, Discovery onward, we have like modern TV production values where before it was very obviously like 60s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. They look very much of their time. But you can tell like I can nitpick the specific ways that they do it, but like you can tell they're trying to make it feel still part of a cohesive universe.
Since we're here, what's up with the shirts? Like, and when I say that, I think of like the original show with like yellow, red, blue. Did that signify rank or job or anything? And then also, does that carry over into like other incarnations of Star Trek?
Yeah. They don't always represent the same thing, but generally the color on your uniform denotes what department you're in,
okay,
or what kind of job you do. So red is generally command, in the original series, the green color is command, red is like engineering or security, and green and blue is like sciences or medicine. Next gen onward, generally blue is still for sciences, red is now for command, and like yellow orange is like your transporter chief, your engineer, your security, that sort of stuff. And so it's just kind of like what department you're in.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you. Because that was one thing I would see it and it was very iconic, but I'm just like, what does it mean? And I just always knew that the red shirts would always die. And I'm like, why are these fucking dudes always getting completely rocked every time they go down on a planet?
So that is an interesting artifact of the cultural impact of Star Trek in that like the red shirts dying thing is a trope that is not actually accurate to what happens in the show.
Really?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things like that where other parts of pop culture have referred back to Star Trek in ways that may not always be accurate, but because it's another popular thing, it makes it way back into the culture as a thing that's part of Star Trek. So red shirts dying is one. Another one is beam me up, Scotty.
Yeah.
Those 3 words. Captain Kirk literally never says those 3 words in that order anywhere in Star Trek ever.
Really?
Yeah. It was, and I don't remember which one. It was in a sitcom. Somebody quoted him as having said that, and it became a cultural reference. So now that's the phrase everybody knows, even though he never actually said it on the show. Yeah, it's wild.
I'm learning so much.
So many
today.
layers.
Like an onion or an ogre.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so how about do you have like a least favorite character on the show? Is there anybody where you're like, oh, fuck this person or thing?
So, so let's clarify character that I think is a bad person or character that I just like don't think works narratively and don't enjoy seeing.
I feel like let's go with the latter, because is there any way that you just like outright hate? I mean, for real? No, probably not.
Not really. I mean, so there are characters that kind of make me uncomfortable, but I get what they were trying to do.
Okay.
There's a character named Reg Barkley.
Okay.
He's a recurring character in Next Gen. and he is chronically nervous and anxious.
Okay.
And having someone like that in a meaningful position in a Star Trek show is actually pretty cool. As a person who struggles with anxiety, who has problems keeping myself together sometimes, it feels good to see that represented and be like this person can still like achieve in a high, like his contribution is valued despite having mental health problems.
Okay.
Is kind of the general shape of it. But he's also a creep sometimes.
Oh no.
And that's not great. There are sometimes where Star Trek does a thing where they obviously want you to have a little too much sympathy for an evil person.
Okay.
There is a character named Dukat in Deep Space Nine who the gross oversimplification of his character is that he is Hitler.
Okay. That's he's Space Hitler?
Yeah. So the story of Deep Space Nine starts as the occupation of a planet called Bajor is ending.
Okay.
The Cardassian government has occupied Bajor in a very direct and intentional Holocaust allegory.
Okay.
And Starfleet comes in after this is over to help Bajor recover.
Okay.
Dukat was one of the people in charge of this brutal occupation where millions and millions of people were forced into labor camps, starved, brutally murdered, like very, very, very bad stuff.
Yeah.
There's some interesting storytelling that comes from it though, and like how the Bajorans recover, how they deal with that like inherited cultural trauma. And most of the time, Dukat is a wonderful villain. And like as a character, narratively, I love him because he's a good villain. Like he's a shitty person and I hate him. And every time bad things happen, I cheer. But like in the story, he is a good villain. He serves the purpose of a villain really, really well. Sometimes they veer a little too much into like, maybe the evil murderers just misunderstood.
Okay.
And they tried to do a weird like romance arc thing with him and a Bajorian character that like he was the overseer of the brutal occupation and murder of a bunch of their people. And yet like somebody's going to fall in. It was really weird. And it was not an arc that lasted very long. But like, I think of things like that, no characters that I think are universally awful. I think if there was one that I'm like, I don't hate you, but I'm not excited to see you. Worf has a son. His name's Alexander. And most of his purpose on screen is to be annoying and sometimes kind of sympathetic.
Okay.
And that's not the fault of the actor who played him. Like,
is he like a full grown adult or is he?
No, most of the time he's a young kid.
Oh, he's like a kid.
But like, he's also dealing with trauma. Like he found his mom dying, watched his mom die,
shit.
Is all of a sudden being raised by a father who like didn't even know he existed until. So like, of course the kid's going to be fucked up and weird. Right. And so like, I have a lot of sympathy for him being fucked up and weird. But like some of his storylines, I just don't super enjoy. So like, I don't hate him, but I don't necessarily go back and watch the episodes that are centered on him very much.
All right, let's go back to Happy Time. How about aliens? Do you have a favorite? I don't know. What would I call? Is it a race? Is it a
race, species?
Species?
Yeah.
How do we frame it?
Favorite non-human?
Yeah.
I am a huge Klingon fan, and I am also a huge fan of the Trill. I talked a little bit about the Trill earlier with the symbionts and the memory thing. There's a lot of really cool gender stuff that they do with that. And there are lots of interesting implications for gender. So like being a trans person, that's obviously interesting to me. But Klingons are interesting. And I am a Klingon fan now for different reasons than I was when I was a kid, because essentially Klingons are a feudal society.
Okay.
Very focused on like honor and duty and family and all of the the more powerful political entities in the Klingon world are houses, are families, right? It's just like very, very feudalistic.
Kind of like samurais.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of it was based on that genre of thing. And they're like striving to be like honorable and virtuous, and all of that is cool. They're like strong warriors. But also I think they have the benefit of being one of the first like non-Starfleet entities to get any like real fleshing out. So you get an idea of what their full culture looks like. If there's a thing that I think Star Trek consistently has a problem with in a lot of ways, it is presenting other cultures as monocultures. So like all Klingons are X, all Vulcans are Y, all Trill are Z, those sorts of things. And that ends up stumbling into some really bad commentary on race. Because they start talking about like race essentialism. So Klingons are all inherently this. Vulcans are all inherently this. And you can go some really gross places with that very fast, right? And Klingons were among the first group of folks to start to get even a little bit of nuance in there, where you start to really get a sense of what their broader culture looks like. And just from a world building perspective, that makes them really interesting to me. Because on the one hand, you have like the government and military entities who are very much wearing the veil of being honorable and virtuous and noble. But behind the scenes, the political machinations are everything we would recognize from a deeply corrupt system, right? Politicians who like drop their morality the minute it benefits them. And in a lot of ways, the people who are the true believers in the thing everyone is professing are the people who are punished for it.
Right.
So all of those dynamics are super interesting to me. And that's not even necessarily a commentary on them being good or bad. It's just deep and wide and interesting, and I just want to know everything about it.
When they are interacting with characters from like other species and stuff, and you talking about like the monoculture, do they ever get to a point where like with a character like Worf, where like obviously he's on the show on a regular basis, do they ever pierce through that where they get to the point where it's like, oh, this guy isn't just the same as everybody else, and everybody else isn't just the same as him? Yes, he's part of a culture, but he also is an individual that has thoughts and opinions that might go outside the majority of the people who he comes from.
Well, an interesting thing about Worf is that he's kind of an outcast from Klingon society because he was raised by humans, right? But he is also actually a true believer in what Klingon, the dominant Klingon culture professes itself to be, and being honorable and noble and virtuous and honest and with a sense of duty. But because he has this other thing, he's not necessarily accepted by them. And a lot of Worf's storylines are exploring that dynamic. And so, yeah, definitely you get to see him like being really wrong. Like, well, Klingons don't do this and Klingons do this in ways that are not necessarily accurate. But also when powerful Klingons act badly, he, as the outcast, is the one holding them accountable, saying like, no, like you're doing wrong. You're the ones not doing your duty here, and I'm here to hold you accountable for it. And even though I'm an outsider and you don't respect me, I know that I'm right and that you're acting in a way that's wrong, and I'm going to move with integrity and hold you accountable for that. And sometimes in ways that cost him very dearly. And so it's interesting cultural dynamics like that make Klingons interesting to me. And also the fact that someone invented an entire Klingon language.
Yeah, which is, can we talk about that for a second?
Oh, absolutely we can.
How and why? Like, I mean, I get the idea of like having a language that's not real, but at the same time, like, how do you actually make a language? Like, how does this even work?
Well, you start with being a PhD in linguistics, who language is his entire thing.
Okay, check.
There's a very long and winding story, but essentially he was hired to write Klingon dialogue for the original series Star Trek movies. And someone thought, wouldn't it be fun if there was a tabletop book that fleshed out a Klingon language so people could like show their friends and it would be a funny thing. Aha, Klingon language. But being a guy who really knows languages, he's like, I'm going to make it a real thing with
Yeah.
a coherent system that's a real language that people can speak. But I don't expect that anyone's ever actually going to learn it. And of course, he deeply underestimated Star Trek
Yes.
fans. No, the scale is not as big as a lot of people. A lot of people think that there are a shit ton of people that speak Klingon. There really are not. The number of people who are truly conversant in Klingon is probably less than 100. It's probably less than like a dozen. People who are at my level who are like barely conversant and kind of know the language, I would say there are hundreds of us. And then maybe thousands who are some level of like very, very novice level. Like I know a couple of words kind of thing. It's not a large community by any stretch.
They can like recite a phrase or something like that.
Exactly.
Where it's like, okay, cool. I got this down to at least this point.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, it's just a fun, interesting, nerdy thing to engage in. And like, actually, most people who speak Klingons are language nerds, not necessarily Star Trek nerds. Because constructed languages like is a whole area of interest for folks. And I know people who are part of the Klingon speaking community that are either very casual Star Trek fans or not even really Star Trek fans at all. They just think Klingon is a cool language.
Nice. Well, I just could not imagine like being able to converse in it, but it would just be so cool to be able to do it and just be able to have that with somebody to like say it and then have them come back and just like, oh, dude, okay, cool. We're definitely on this level that most other people aren't on.
Bej, Valku.
I don't even know what the fuck that means. But that shit sounded awesome.
I said, it is. It's very cool.
Perfect. Well, look, I mean, I feel like we could keep going, but at some point,
Oh, could we?
I mean, I don't see how we couldn't. I mean, this thing just kind of seems like it's a never-ending hole, and it's a very big, wide, deep subject. Is there anything that we didn't hit upon today that you specifically wanted to get out to people, or something that you were like, I hope we talk about this?
Not anything specific. I think the thing that I ultimately love about Star Trek is how big the tent can be if you want it to be. It's been around long enough that almost any kind of story you can tell, Star Trek has told it in one way or another. And I think it brings me so much joy that I want to share that with other people who might find it there. And that's not to say like everyone should be a Star Trek fan and I'm just like beat you over the head until you love it. But it's something that means a lot to me and I've gotten a lot out of. Like I was thinking about this on the drive over and that my Star Trek fandom, I mean, it started when I was a very, very small child. I'm almost 40 and it's still here in somewhere, even if I'm slightly less obsessed with it as my life goes on. I think it's fair to say that it will probably be a lifelong thing with me. Like I will probably die a massive Star Trek fan. Yeah. And it will be something that has been a part of my life longer than almost anything else ever will be. And there's something that's like really cool about that. And I think everyone should have a thing that matters to them that much. And the thing I think I would want to share with everyone is that you should find something you love that much, that means that much to you, that you get that much out of, that you can connect with other people about. I think everyone should have something like that, whatever it is. And the joy of being a fan of something and being that nerdy about something is something that I think I would want to share with anyone. And it doesn't like, if it's going to be like football, I'm probably not going to be the person for that. And that's okay. That's not to like shit on people who are football fans. It's just not my thing. Right. And that's like, one of the things about growing up, quote unquote, is that like childlike, like unabashedly loving a thing and being nerdy about a thing and being dorky about a thing. A lot of times we encourage that in kids, and part of the process of growing up is knowing that that is less and less cool to do as you grow up, depending on what you're into. And I think that kind of play, that kind of fun, that kind of joy is something that I've found essential to my life. Like if I didn't have that, my life would be miserable. And I want people to feel like it's okay to love things that much.
With you loving something this much, has it ever hurt you?
Yeah. There are some storylines, especially in Star Trek Picard. There's a storyline that is essentially like the young kids are poisoned, the old people need to come save them,
Okay.
which is just like not a great story to tell. And it's not intentionally a bad trans story, but it very much maps to being a bad story about transness and gender. Some other things. There's a couple of really, really cringy storylines about disability that are like super not great. Especially one episode in particular that was written about a character who uses a wheelchair. The person who wrote the original draft of the story was a wheelchair user. And so it was like a way for him to like talk about moving through the world as a person who uses a wheelchair. Right. And, somebody else got a hold of it, and after rewrites, it ended up being kind of cringy and an episode that is like generally agreed by the fandom to be like, oh yeah, they probably should have thought twice before they did that one. So there are some stories like that are pretty cringy that even if I'm not directly affected by it, I'm just like, ooh, that's a bad look. So there's that. And then just general fandom things, a dynamic about fandom that is replicated essentially anywhere is any proximity to celebrity or clout or power makes people act deeply unethically.
Yeah.
And I've seen that play out over and over and over again. If somebody, knows a couple of the Star Trek celebrities, people know that they want to be in proximity to that person. They give that person a pedestal, and it just doesn't matter how horribly they treat people behind the scenes. I have some personal experience with that I carry some baggage from.
It is weird to see that when people get into a position of power and how they wield it. And especially too, sometimes when like those people might come from a background where we were picked on, but now they get to be the one with the bully pulpit. And it's just like, do you remember being on the other side of this? Like, why would you go to this extreme? That's something I never get, is people who have been treated shitty that then now that they have the stick get to fucking use it. I'm just like, ugh.
Power feels like safety for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't understand other ways to live, that building community is safety as well. And it's tough because that usually comes from a place of trauma, and I want to give people space to be a little messy as they're recovering from traumatic events, but that can never be an excuse to actively hurt other people. And that's the way it ends up working out for a lot of people. And you can kind of see that in the way that people move. Like when you get into a position of power, you can see how people use that power and whether they see it as a way to escape accountability or a way to accept responsibility for a thing.
How would Jean-Luc Picard use that power?
Yeah, exactly. You have the chance to do something good for other people, or you have the chance to do something that benefits you, and damn what it does to other people.
Yeah.
And like I said, some people do that from a place of trauma, and I get it. And I can be understanding of that while also saying that it's not okay. And that's not unique to the Star Trek fandom. I think that's a dynamic that replicates itself in almost every area of life in one way or another. Like if you abstract it out to like proximity to celebrity or clout or power, people often end up acting deeply unethically. Regardless, if you are part of a social community of any kind, you have seen that play out.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, let's land the plane, or in this case, let's dock the Enterprise on this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey, I'm trying.
You're doing great.
What do you want to see moving forward? Is there a specific story you would like to see Star Trek tackle, or what do you want to see like the next series be? Like, with ideas such as like Deep Space Nine being a space station. Do you want to see something kind of as an alternative to just people being on the Enterprise? Like, what do you want to see next?
What I would love to see in Star Trek is a thing that I have accepted I probably never will. And that is stories that are entirely focused outside of Starfleet and the Federation, where humans, or at least cultures where humans have most of the power, are not the focus of the story. Where we really, really get a deeply nuanced view of what it's like to live on the Klingon homeworld or to live on the Cardassian homeworld, and what it's like, especially for people of marginalized experiences in those cultures. There are some interesting cultural dynamics that make me imagine stories that can happen. Cardassians are very family focused. There's a thing where they say like 8 generations of people eat dinner at the same table, live under the same house, right? You can imagine having that lineage as a source of power. You have all of this cultural history behind you to help you as a foundation to fall back on. But when you have that many people and you're a very family focused, like family is a power structure, right? And people use that power to get away with awful things. And how do Cardassians reckon with that dynamic? There's a book where you get to see like a Cardassian religious minority. There's some interesting stuff with that. So stories like that are like deal with things that are relevant to our cultural context, but happen very much outside of our cultural context. I want so deeply for those stories to happen. But I think it's a tough sell for a network to be like, hey, we're going to write a story that's deeply unrelatable to a lot of people. How's that sound? You want to throw a couple $1 million per episode our way? How's that sound?
Yeah, and maybe it's not a series, but like a one-off or something like that. You know, I would like to, I do like that idea, especially in stuff like something like Star Trek, where there is just such like a gigantic world and there's so many stories to tell. It's like, why not just like do a one-off or do a special or just do like a mini series or, you know, the way Netflix does now, where it's like, hey, here's a series, but it's literally like 3 episodes and they're 40 minutes a piece. It's like, cool. Okay. Give me that. I'll take that.
And there's been a little bit of that. There were 2 seasons of a thing called Short Treks that are like 8 to 10 to 12 minute stories. Some of them are focused like with the main characters of Discovery or Strange New Worlds, but some of them are outside that. There's one story in particular. It's actually one of my favorite Star Trek stories of all time, and it's kind of a prequel to the Picard series, but it follows like a day in the life of 2 school children, and a tragedy happens. It would take a while to explain, but essentially it's like these 2. I think the coding is that they're like late stage elementary school or maybe middle school age. They look 12, 13, 14, something like that. And basically they hate each other, they fight a whole bunch, and then a tragedy happens to both of them at the same time.
Oh.
And it's just like a deeply powerful story about like connecting with people that it still happens in the context of the Federation, but it is outside of Starfleet. It's not happening on a starship where there's like a captain and a crew and that sort of stuff. Stories like that, even there's been talk about like a JAG show.
Oh, that'd be cool.
But Star Trek, right?
Oh.
Or like a House of Cards, but Star Trek.
Star Trek.
You know, those like all of that sort of stuff could be interesting.
Yeah.
Even like a story that is still like within the Federation, but not about Starfleet, you know, stuff like that. Something that's we were talking about, I'm going to do the Star Wars thing.
Thank you. Jump in. It's fun.
Throw myself out of the house for it. But that's like one of the cool things about Andor is that it leads up to the Skywalker saga, right? Because it's about how Cassian Andor got radicalized. But like people living in a world, right? Yeah. Like we get some of that in Star Trek, but we don't get a lot of it, and I want more of that.
Yeah, that's I'm with you. I like that stuff, especially in my big fictional worlds. I like the idea of what people see on the day to day and what it is just to live their life and experience stuff. Because you know, me as somebody doing that, that's relatable to me. You know, because I think about like if I lived in some kind of sci-fi world, would I likely be, you know, smuggling stuff and raiding ships on it? No, I'd probably be, you know, working like some weird middle management job on a planet, you know, maybe like fixing carburetors on rocket ship engines. I don't know, but I doubt I'm doing something really super cool and that's changing the world. And those are stories I like to see too. I like to see that stuff of just like, what is it just to exist?
Yeah. If I lived in the Star Trek universe, I'd probably be a journalist. I don't think I'd be in Starfleet.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. I like the fact that that you sat down and thought about that you would not be in Starfleet and that you'd be a journalist on the outside.
Yeah.
Would you be reporting on what Starfleet is doing wrong? Would you be an investigative journalist?
Probably.
Okay. Not a propagandist. You're not just like Starfleet. Everything's great. Doing the best.
Yeah. Yeah. So much of my fundamental being is like holding power to account. And that includes myself. Like I'm a coach on my roller derby team. And when people challenge me and want to hold me accountable, I do my best to respond with integrity to that. Because my general life philosophy, this is abstracted very, very far, but the more power you have, the more skeptical I am of you. And that includes me. If I get power and people approach me skeptically because I have it, I don't begrudge them that.
Interesting. Well, okay. Not the way I thought we were docking the Enterprise today. But at the same time, a very interesting thing to chew on as we close this thing out. Well, look, if people want to hear more about your stuff or if they want to check out what you're doing, where can they find you out online?
Philosophers in Space should be in any podcast app you listen to. If you like weird philosophy questions that'll keep you up at night, and lots of jokes about sex and tentacles. Like I just cannot emphasize how often we talk about the sexual nature of tentacles, regardless of whether they're attached to aliens or it's a whole thing.
It's a thing. Was that hentai that started that? Like where did like that just got into the world somehow?
I don't know much about the history of it.
But it's just people think about it. It's just like tentacles.
Yeah. I mean, Aaron and I are we're sci-fi nerds. We like philosophy, and we're both just so incredibly horny. And like, if any of that sounds interesting to you, Philosophers in Space might be a show you enjoy. And yeah, I'm at Callie Gets It on Instagram. Honestly, most of my pictures are of my dog. He's a small dachshund. He's very, very cute. Worth the follow. So
great. So good. Honestly, follow for the dog. I mean, the content as well, but the dog, so cute. He's such a good little guy.
He's the best.
I watched Vita Day of him running in the snow, and I'm like, this is
yes.
You know what? Life's okay.
This little sweater with the dragon scales on the back.
Yeah. Listener, if you have depression, it's not going to solve it, but it's going to give you a nice 5 seconds where you're like, fuck, it could be worse.
Decompress it a little bit.
Yeah. It'll take the edge off.
Yeah.
Listener, find me at Neonano on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you got a friend that is into Star Trek, please share the episode with them. I'm gonna have to share this with my friend Christina Jefferson, aka the Devil, who used to be a captain. Total side rant here. Used to be for the Ohio Roller Derby, was one of their original captains. Now the head of DEI for the fucking San Francisco 49ers.
Hell yeah, love that.
So I don't know how that happens, but it did happen, and she's awesome, and she loves Star Trek. So shout out to her. And if you have a friend that likes Star Trek, share the episode with them and then let them know there's over 150 episodes. Everything's evergreen. You can jump in wherever you want. You don't have to start at the beginning. Just look for something that you're interested in and check the episode out. Callie, thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for doing the show. Really appreciate it. And thank you for teaching me about the world beyond.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
All right, listener, peace.